Once again, we are live from the wastelands of the internet. I have come. I am the nomad. And today, unfortunately, today I don't have any co hosts. So it's going to be just me for the moment. Unless somebody wants to join, you're more than welcome to join. Welcome, Mr. Barkley. I think we'll start with the Ukraine today. But uh, Twitter Twitter hasn't changed. Right? I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, Twitter's changed. Twitter hasn't changed." Okay, not for the better, not for the worse. I mean, there are some things people have been talking about. There seems to be less targeting. Notice the word less targeting of conservatives, but the same jackasses still dominate. The same morons still put out bullcrap, and it does continue. Now, I was never someone who stood up there and said that Elon Musk was someone who could be trusted anyway. Good morning, Oz. Welcome. Elon Musk is Elon Musk. Okay. He was part of the leftist set. And in order to escape from the left, you have to admit and have an open mind. You have to admit when you were wrong. You have to be willing to admit when you're wrong. I haven't seen it from Musk yet. Okay. I'm not saying he thinks he's right every time. That's not what defines a liberal. Okay. In my mind, what defines a leftist, what defines a liberal in my mind is the inability of admitting when they were wrong, admitting that they are putting their feelings ahead of actual results. So what am I referring to in this case? Let's give this as an example. Kiev warns, or Kiev, all right, warns of difficult winter after deadly strikes. Ukraine on Thursday warned that a difficult winter months lay ahead after a massive Russian missile barrage targeted civilian infrastructure. Oh, it's civilian infrastructure. The military doesn't use that infrastructure at all. Anyway, killing 3 in the south and wounding many across the country. Russia launched the strikes as Ukraine prepares for a third winter during Moscow's 19-month-long invasion and as President Volodymyr Zelensky made his second wartime trip to Washington. Most of the missiles were shot down, but only the majority, not all, Zelensky said, calling for the West to provide Kiev with more anti-missile systems. The fresh attacks came as Poland said it would honor pre-existing commitments of weapon supplies to Kiev a day after saying it would no longer arm its neighbor in a mounting row between the two allies. Moscow hit cities from Rivne in western Ukraine to Kherson in the south, the capital Kiev, and cities in the center and northeast of the country. In other words, they hit cities around the country. All right. Kiev also reported power cuts across the country, where almost 400 cities, towns, and villages as Russia targeted energy sites, but said it was too early to tell if it was the start of a new Russian campaign against the energy sites. Okay, first of all, what this was a signal to, there was a number of foreign ministers who were visiting the Ukraine. And of course, Zelensky was, as I said, over here in the United States begging for more help. Begging and begging and begging. Excuse me here, folks. You guys don't need to hear me blowing my nose. Zelensky as a nation, all right, and Ukraine as a nation has no defensible borders. I've been saying this from the beginning. What you're seeing now is meat grinder tactics by the Russians against the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainian weapons systems, which are NATO, are highly effective in killing a lot of Russians. But that doesn't mean the Ukrainians are walking around scot free and getting off. Okay? The Ukrainians are running out of manpower. And weapon multipliers can only do so much. This is something that most people, and even most of our military, doesn't understand. Okay? And I mean that. It's something, and it's a trap we fell into during the Vietnam War. Our lethality on the battlefield, is second to none. Period. But that doesn't mean a lot, okay, to say we can wipe out tens of thousands of people if what you're trying to do is hit this guy or hit that guy or hit this girl or hit that girl. And only when you know that girl or that guy and this guy are the bad guys. It doesn't do anything to take over a town and then go, okay, but we don't know how to separate the bad guys from the good guys, so we just let the bad guys, attack us, and that's how we'll identify them after we get attacked and get shot. This is not control. The Russians understand that. That's why they're engaging the way they are, and they're learning how to defeat and how to survive, all right, with their equipment as best as possible against the Western forces, Western style forces. Meanwhile, when it comes to troops on the ground, the Ukrainians are beginning to see a problem because they have no reserves to throw into this. They can push into an area, all right, and then what? They can't hold it. They don't have the manpower to hold it. This is what I'm trying to indicate. The lethality of your systems depends on other things. All right, depends on men to be able to run them. If you're out of men, the lethality of your systems are pretty much so. It's just a gun sitting on the ground, waiting for somebody else to pick it up. They've been talking about this Ukrainian offensive. Oh, they're taking back this little town and that little town and this little town. They're not making any real progress. And it's getting toward winter. And when winter sets in, you will see the Russians, all right, once again, counterattack and take back everything, probably. Why? Because they can. All they have to do is probe in a certain area. The Ukrainians have to go from one area to the other area. I suspect that the next breakout that the Russians will attempt will not be in the Crimea. I think they'll allow the Crimea to fester as a wound, all right, and let it continue as it is, and then somewhere in the northern areas, right, they're going to relaunch a major counteroffensive. That's what I suspect the Russians are going to do. Now, a lot of that can be mitigated. Where there's a massive concentration of troops, all right, our weapon systems work the best, right? And so, from that standpoint, in order for Russia to gain ground, all right, they've got to go through our weapon systems, and that's a daunting task. But this war is going to continue. What happens to the Ukrainians if we say, okay, no more guns? If we say no more weapon systems, what's going to happen to them? Everyone keeps talking about how the Ukrainians are defending themselves. No, they're not. They don't have the ability to defend themselves. They need to defend. They absolutely need. It's absolutely critical for their survival for us to sit up there and provide them weapon systems. The problem that we're having in the United States, quite frankly, is the fact that we don't have the excess money to give to them anymore. It's all been wasted. It's all been squandered. So hard choices are going to have to get made in the United States. And the Democrats are more than willing to sit up there and support the Ukrainians, all right, at the expense of the American people left and right. And they're going to. And it's going to be shown to them. The Republicans would be fools not to engage in this government shutdown and then point out that the Democrats are refusing to help out Americans. They'd rather sit up there and help out Ukrainians. And that's all they have to do. They haven't insured it. The Democrats have ensured a shutdown. You think the Republicans are stupid? Oh, there's a lot of Republicans that don't want the shutdown, because to them they're part of the uniparty. But there's also a lot of Republicans that are like, wait a minute, this is our chance to really show the American people who these Democrat cards are, and they're going to. Because the Pentagon has already stated, we're going to sit up there and still keep funding the Ukrainians. They'll be top priority. The funding the Ukrainians are top priority, the American people aren't? Really? Prove it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Oh, Chris. Ukrainian tranny. Ukrainian tranny's gonna put me on. Come on. Look. If you are a defender of the Ukrainians, okay, and you think that the Ukrainians are fighting for their country and fighting for their lives, okay, and you think that the Russians are the evil bad guys, all right, they're Satan incarnate, and Putin is a bad guy. Putin is a bad guy. Okay, no one's here has ever said otherwise. Okay, but if you're not honest with what Putin is, and if you're not honest with what Zelensky is, all right, how are you going to successfully prosecute this war? Serious answer. Serious question. Serious question. Without putting U.S. troops on the ground, without a major intervention of troops on the ground by the Europeans, and this is something the European Union, to be honest, if they were smart, they'd be doing. I'm dead serious. All right. Excuse me. I gotta blow my nose again. I get a little stuffed up here. Sun allergies is what it is. The sun has come out and I'm like allergic. No. I'm serious about this, about the EU. If the EU, who have been trying to create an EU military for a long freaking time, had any brains at all, right now they would sit up there and be training their troops and sending them over there in the great EU experiment. Okay? Because it would solidify the power of the EU. Okay? The problem that they have, of course, is the nations that make up the EU are fat and lazy. And I mean lazy. And I'm not saying the United States isn't. Okay? But in comparison, Europeans are far lazier. Far, far lazier. They haven't been able, and they have no willingness to stand up for their own defense at all. Where are the great French forces? Where are the great German forces, all right, to defend against the Russian hordes? Where are they? Where's the great industrial might of the Germans? Oh, wait a minute here. Here we go. Germany went from envy of the world to the worst performing major developed economy. What happened? This is from the AP, yes, the AP, Associated Press. Essen, Germany. For most of this century, Germany racked up one economic success after another, dominating global markets for high-end products like luxury cars and industrial machinery, selling so much to the rest of the world that half of the economy ran on exports. Jobs were plentiful. The government's financial coffers grew as other European countries drowned in debt, and the books were written about what other countries could learn from the Germans. No longer. Now Germany is the world's worst performing major developed economy, with both the International Monetary Fund and European Union expected to shrink this year. It follows the Russian invasion of the Ukraine and the loss of Moscow's cheap natural gas, an unprecedented shock to Germany's energy-intensive industries, long the manufacturing powerhouse of Europe. The sudden underperformance by Europe's largest economy has set off a wave of criticism, hand-wringing, and debate about a way forward. Really? What happened? What happened is the United States, all right, can no longer underwrite all of this. You see, Germany, all right, was getting tons and tons and tons of money from U.S. interests. When that money spigot dried up, Germany started falling down. When selling to the United States, heavy industrial equipment stopped because the United States is being run by a loony leftist Marxist. The rest of the stuff started falling apart. German hand wringing? What happened to the natural gas? I thought they were getting away from gas. I thought they were going away from fossil fuels. Germany was the way to show us the power of the green energy. They were showing us with these big windmills and solar power, and they were going to be the country that sit up there and showed everybody how to become carbon neutral. Oh, China's... We'll talk about China in a little bit here. Gee, where are the Germans and their gigantic exports of Leopard tanks, missile systems, heavy defense systems? Where is the vaunted Luftwaffe to go over there and show what for? To help the Ukrainians out. They're under attack by the evil Putin dictator and NATO. We gotta support this fledgling democracy. This democracy, we gotta support it, or the Russians are gonna take over all of Europe. Really? Russia's gonna take over all of Europe? What are the Europeans doing about it? Well, they're not doing anything, you know, man. They're not doing anything. So we gotta. No, that's the point. Okay? That's the point. Germany was this big powerhouse, and yet one of the things that they were doing was reneging year after year, decade after decade on their commitments to NATO and making sure that their armed forces were a match for the Russians. No, instead of spending the 2% to 2.5%, all right, of their GDP on defense, they were less than 1% for decades, relying upon the United States to fund their defense. But you see, at some point, the United States starts to look around and goes, wait a minute here. All you guys have done is stuck daggers in our backs around the world domestically, all right, economically, why the hell should we be helping you with anything? And that's where the rub lies. If you want to be an economic competitor with the United States, fine. But that doesn't mean that we have to stand there and go, oh no, but you can be an economic competitor while we fund your entire defense system. While we sit up there and bear the brunt of Europe's defense. Even today, the Ukrainians aren't getting billions from the Germans, are they? Year after year. Where are these Leopard tanks? Oh, that's right. When the Russians invaded 19 months ago, you know how many operational Leopard tanks that the vaunted German Wehrmacht had in its arsenal that were operational? Truly operational? 500. They had 500 fully operational Leopard 2s. 500. Now, how many have they given and sent over to the vaunted Ukrainian freedom fighters? Just asking the question. The war has become a war of attrition there. And the Germans aren't doing anything to protect them. You don't see any German troops on the ground. You don't see any German troops bolstering Poland like you do the United States. The United States has over 1,000 M1 tanks currently in Poland. I know a lot of people don't believe me. I'm going to type this in here just to prove it to people. In 2022, where is this at? According to this, it says they have 647 main battle tanks, including 116 M1A1 Abrams. All right. They ordered the M1A1 Abrams in January 2022. I'm telling you, even before then, that they had ordered a ton of tanks. All right, our U.S. forces in Poland, we have over 10,000 troops in Poland. All right, so some of the tanks that are in Poland, granted, are under U.S. control. But that's the point. Where are the Germans at? They have 647 main battle tanks, all right, on their own. They have 200 something, about approximately 200 something U.S. M1 tanks. But they also have U.S. soldiers permanently stationed, all right, in there. We realigned some of our base assets down. What are we doing? Where are the Germans? Where are the French? And let's be honest, the reason I'm picking on the French and the Germans is because when it comes to the EU does whatever the Germans and the French tell them. When the Germans and the French are on the same sheet of music, the EU does exactly what it's told. What about the UK? What about the UK? Let me go talk about the UK for a moment. Prince William reveals he went jogging in Central Park and no one noticed him. The Prince of Wales has charmed New York during his short visit, sharing a joke with locals and tourists alike, and had a jog through Central Park as commuters bustled about. Nobody cares about him in the United States. That's the point, okay? Now, I mentioned this to Jensen. Jensen just laughed about it. He said, yeah, but if his wife had sit up there and went jogging, right, that'd have been a whole different scenario. I said, his wife couldn't have gone jogging in Central Park. Are you kidding me? She'd have probably been raped. And when I talk about the United States does not have an aristocracy, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. The people that fawn over the quote unquote elites in America, whether that those elites are Hollywood, whether that those elites are some celebrity or some politician somewhere, the only one who fawns over those asshats are themselves. Joe Biden, all right, would not be able and be fawned over if he walked down the street, okay, of Tucson, Arizona. There are celebrities that would get fawned over here in Arizona. But if he started walking down the street, no one would care. Most celebrities have a bad time realizing when they get into New York, unless they make it known that, oh, look, it's me, it's this Hollywood celebrity. Most of the time, what happens is they get ignored. Nobody gives a shit who they are. Biden can't even walk. All right, stumbles. All right. Meanwhile, what do you got going on over here? Bullhorns blasting, water cannons, Chinese ships wall off the sea. The Chinese military base on Mischief Reef off the Philippine island of Palawan loomed in front of our boat, oblivious even in the, or obvious, excuse me, obvious even in the pre-dawn dark. Radar domes used for military surveillance floated like nimbus clouds. Lights pointed to a runway made for her fighter jets, backed by warehouses perfect for cruise missile launchers, more than 900 miles from the Chinese mainland in an area of the South China Sea that the International Tribunal has unequivocally determined does not belong to China. Cell phones ping with the message, "Welcome to China." The world's most brazen maritime militarization is gaining muscle in waters through which 1/3 of global trade passes. Here, on underwater reefs, are known as dangerous ground, and the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, all right, has fortified an archipelago of forward operating bases that these branded these waters as China's, despite no international legal grounding. Like international legal grounding meant anything to anybody. Who writes this crap? Striking striking WGA authors. All right. But why is China doing this? Why is China stepping up militarily? Why is China flexing its muscle? All right, to prove itself? No. No, whenever China does something like this, whenever it sits up there and tries to run around doing this kind of crap, you can take it as, yeah, this is their training exercise to try and invade Taiwan. And I don't discount that. Don't get me wrong. But they will attack Taiwan, I suspect, in part, mainly because they need a distraction, folks, because their economy is falling apart. They can't sustain this. They have fallen, by the way. I want people to understand. Trade into the United States has fallen to the point where Mexico, once again, is our number one trading partner of imports into this nation. And it's not because they're making more than China is. The problem is we can't afford it, so we've reduced trade. Where's the fastest way to reduce trade? China. China is looking for buyers. Where are they going to get buyers at? I can hear it now. Well, the Russians are open. No, the Russians don't have money either. They're in a war. And it's a war of attrition. And a lot of Russians have become casualties. People misunderstand something. Let's assume, and I'm just going to throw a number out there. I don't have a basis for this number, right? I'm just going to put a number out there. Let's say 50,000 Russians have died in the Ukraine. Okay? I'm just trying to make a point here. I don't know if it's significantly more or significantly less. I suspect, to be honest, that it's around 50,000. 50 to 60,000 troops, possibly 100,000 troops, all right, have died. Russians have died. For every troop that dies, you can probably expect approximately 9 people have been wounded. Well, if 9 people are getting wounded for every soldier that's died, in 100,000, we'll use 100,000. That means 900,000 Russians have been wounded in battle. This is a significant portion of their overall force. You can't deny that. Now, I know a lot of people have been saying things like, well, 500,000 Russian troops have died. I don't think 500,000 Russian troops have died. I don't think that 5 million Russians have been wounded or died in the battle in the Ukraine. But it's not 500 either. It's not a few thousand either. It's not 10,000. It's a significant number. They've already lost far more troops than we have in the last 30 years. All right, the United States has lost in the last 30 years. I want you to think on that. The Russians in their battle for the last 2 years for the Ukraine have lost more than the United States has lost in battle in the last 30 years total. Altogether. That's the difference in how we fight, though. The Russians are also, this is something else that people better wake the F up about. The Russians aren't stupid. Their weapon systems are becoming more and more and more lethal as well. And their tactics have been evolving. Are they at our standard? No. But Russia's not fighting anymore to take land. This is something else that people have to understand. What they're fighting for now is to meat grind. And you better start developing some tactics for it. All right, let's shift gears to the United States. Hey, Shorty. Americans are underhanded? Americans have a very simple philosophy: win. Unless our politicians are busy freaking stabbing us in the back, American policies are win. For Egypt, Menendez was key to access to billions in U.S. aid. When an annual allotment of up to $1.3 billion faltered even a sliver, Egypt found an ally in Senator Robert J. Menendez, who on Friday was indicted on bribery charges tied to Egypt. After decades as one of the world's largest recipients of United States foreign aid, the Egyptian government was nervous about how long the largesse would continue at that level. But when the United States cut a sliver of aid in 2017 over Egypt's grim human rights record, that's a lie. The United States did not cut this because of Egypt's poor civil rights record. Who was the president then? Who is the president then? Hey, Vivian and Kurum. Who was president? Trump. And Trump was saying we need to reduce our outlay to these countries, which is why it was slashed. And not by a lot either. All right? Egyptian official found an ally in Robert J. Menendez of New Jersey. He happened to be the top-ranking Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, a position that Egypt evidently felt could help its footing in Washington. All right, let me talk about this asshole for a moment. First of all, Bob Menendez is from a corrupt state and is as corrupt as a dictatorial force, all right, has come out of New Jersey ever. Okay? New Jersey is horrifically corrupt, the entire state. Okay? And Bob Menendez was charged and found not guilty because his vote mattered. Okay? And the press downplayed his corruption files, right? Saying, oh no, you can't prove anything. There's not real corruption here. They downplayed it, and as a result, he was found not guilty. And they refused to bring other charges against him, like sleeping with 14-year-olds from the Dominican Republic when he was on visits down there, and they had all the evidence, and they had all the people willing to testify, and the Democrats in charge, and the press, and the media turned a blind eye. You see, but now there's a problem for Bobby, because he's been caught red-handed with gold bars delivered to him by the Egyptians. You see, the problem with gold was Bobby Boy and a few of his little buddies didn't think that they would ever have to sit up there and face the fact that they would be pulled up in front of this. I mean, after all, he just got away with corruption before, all right? And the press covered for him before, you see. But when it comes to gold bars, the government has moved to have all of that reporting done directly to the IRS and directly to other forces within the government. And see, when you try to sell a gold bar now, if it's over $600, and all gold is over $600, you got $2,000 right now for an ounce of gold. If it's in coin form, it's a few $100s more. All right, so quarter ounce gold coins you might be able to get for under $600, maybe. But any big purchase of those things will cause that coinage to go up. You see, once that precious metal stuff started getting reported, and people started asking Bob, where are you getting all this gold from, Bob? Bob had no answers. See, Bob thought he was protected. And you'll see, you watch. He'll attempt jury nullification once again, right, to get off with his criminal activity once again. This man is an absolute worst element in our country. He's a pedophile. He's a degenerate. He sells his office to the highest bidder. They're not going to do anything to him. They are not going to do a damn thing to him. The Uniparty will not do a damn thing to him. And I guarantee you he'll get some frickin' DC jury, right, that is more than willing to sit up there and turn a blind eye to his corruption because he's a Dem. Meanwhile, Garland says incendiary memo directing the FBI to use counterterrorism tools on parents was never rescinded. Chip Roy, a Republican from Texas, grilled Attorney General Merrick Garland during a hearing Wednesday about what has been known as the administration's domestic terrorist parents memorandum, which brought intense pushback from parents around the country. Roy pressed Garland on whether the memo directing the FBI to use counterterrorism tools relating to parents speaking out at public school buildings and against K through 12 curriculum and agendas with which they disagreed, such as critical race theory and gender ideology related policies in the schools. After Roy repeatedly asked Garland whether the memo was rescinded, the Attorney General finally acknowledged that it wasn't. There's nothing to rescind. The memo was intended to have meetings within 30 days. The 30 days have finished. Nothing happened. Nothing more than a year and a half with that. Well, okay, but have you rescinded, all right, Mr. Garland, have you rescinded using the counterterrorism tools? No. In fact, what he did is he got mad. See, Merrick Garland was also grilled on something else. Merrick Garland loses his temper and gets emotional again when speaking about his Jewish ancestry. Merrick Garland got emotional for the second time during a judiciary hearing on Wednesday when talking about his family's Jewish ancestry. Nobody was talking about it. He brought it up. The Attorney General got into a heated exchange with Republican Jeff Van Drew when he asked whether Garland, who is Jewish, believes traditional Catholics are violent extremists. Van Drew was pointing out to the creation of 2 Pacific Coast FBI field offices that wrote a memo claiming that traditional Catholics are domestic terrorists. The idea that someone with my family background would discriminate against any religion is so outrageous. You didn't answer the question. Okay? And no, it's not. It doesn't matter what your background is, asshole. All right? If you sit up there and don't like Catholics because, for whatever reason, you want to sit up there and say that traditional marriage is a bad thing and you're going to put an end to it, okay? It doesn't matter if your ancestry was Jewish, okay, Baptist, Greek Orthodox, or even another Roman Catholic. Another Roman Catholic would have been asked the same freaking question. Hello, Sean. Welcome. But see, Merrick Garland is an absolute disgrace. Time after time after time, all right, there are memos being put out by you and by the freaking Department of Justice, along with the FBI, targeting people for their beliefs that you find offensive. Like, well, how dare you sit up there and tell an LGBTQ, rainbow butt monkey that he's a degenerate. How dare you? We're gonna get you, you son of a bitch. We're gonna get you. We're gonna use the counterterrorism thing, and we're gonna crawl through your finances, and we're gonna crawl through your IRS, and we're gonna sit up there and find out if you ever stepped out on the line. And we're watching you, boy. We're watching you because you called him a degenerate. Guy has his freaking child raped in schools, and Merrick Garland, that sick son of a bitch, sicked the FBI on him. When he dared to sit up there and say, you sons of bitches got my daughter raped. How dare he sit up there and say that to the school board? How dare he point that out? Get him! Right, Merrick? That's Merrick Garland, folks. That's who he is. That really is who he is. Oh, I'm a Jew. Okay, you're a practicing Jewish? You practicing Judaism? Really? Somebody with my background. Oh, your background? What was that? Well, I had family that slipped there and died in the Holocaust. Okay, and? What does that have to do with you? What does that have to do with how you act? No, 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 no. We're going to get things like this from the New York Post. You got to give this guy Isaac Short some credit here. Coming Chicago to have state-run grocery stores instead of a solution to its crime crisis. Urban progressive treatment plans for their self-inflicted wounds are always some toxic combination of too simplistic and too roundabout. Over the past 2 years, both Walmart, 4 of 8, and Whole Foods, 2 of 4, have closed half of their Chicago locations. The retailers released boilerplate euphemistic statements to explain their choices. We know the community will have questions about why we're closing these locations, acknowledged the former. The simplest explanation is that collectively our Chicago stores have not been profitable since we first opened one nearly 17 years ago. These stores lose tens of millions of dollars a year, and their annual losses nearly doubled in the last 5 years. As we continue to position Whole Foods Market for long-term success, we regularly evaluate the performance and growth potential of each of our stores. One can sympathize with these corporate flacks. All right, task of constructing these statements, constrained as they are by the risks of being extricated, all right, for either making a soulless, numbers-driven business decision or victim blaming. Victim blaming my ass. These people voted for this. So now what you're going to get is Chicago runs food stores. Run by the city of Chicago, your local food store. Can't wait. Folks, I just can't wait. Oh, please. Oh, please, Chicago, open these stores. I can't wait to see how you react. Then the degeneracy continues across into New York, where you have this from the New York Post. Dad sues hospital for $642 million after witnessing his wife's C-section. It gave me a psychotic illness. Maybe you should have closed your eyes. And you wonder why people on the battlefield, the Russians, are looking at us and going, you're soft. If your men can't even watch a C-section, what are they going to do when they see somebody's head blown off standing next to them? Crawl into the fetal position, sucking their thumb? Maybe you thought it was a C-section. A man in Australia sued the hospital where he watched his wife deliver a baby via C-section, all right, in 2018, claiming it caused him a psychotic illness. New dad Anil Kopula, all right, filed the lawsuit several years after the successful operation, declaring that the experience led to a breakdown of his marriage. In documents filed to support his suit, he alleges that he was encouraged or permitted to observe the delivery, that in the course of doing so, he saw his wife's internal organs and blood. Yeah. I mean, no shit. You watched an operation and you saw blood? You watched an operation and you saw internal organs? The hospital breached a duty of care it owed him and is liable to pay him for damages. The fact that he was even able to bring this lawsuit is already a problem. Right? It's already a problem. His lawsuit seeks damages from the Royal Women's Hospital of Melbourne in the amount of 1 billion Australian dollars, equivalent to $642 million in the US. The C-section is a surgical delivery. We know what the C-section is, folks. But and I thought this was in New York. I knew it was a New York Post story, so I thought the hospital was in New York. The fact is that anybody who would even be able to bring a case like this is just downright stupid. Why is your justice system? Why is the justice system even contemplating this? And if it didn't happen in the U.S., it will soon. Don't worry, it will be soon. Meanwhile, over in Great Britain again, fag end. Who wrote this? Harry Cole. Okay, smoking would be banned and cigarettes phased out in plans being considered by Rishi Sunak. So the Prime Minister is going to ban cigarettes. And number 10 did not deny reports last night that the PM is looking again at charging £10 for a GP appointment to stop cancellations. Over 18s would be banned from smoking in a phasing out of fags being drawn by Sunak. Sunak suggested the idea during last year's Tory leadership campaign, and sources say he still believes it would be the right thing to do, but very hard to implement. The tough new anti-smoking measures would see the smoking age increased by a year every year to eventually make it illegal for anyone to buy cigarettes. Oh. So basically, their plan is, okay, it's 18-year-olds can buy it. Well, next year it'll be 19-year-olds, and next year it'll be 20-year-olds. So the people who are smoking can still buy it as they age year after year. Now, why are they doing this? Because they're stupid. All right, what's the cost? Okay, everyone talks about the cost of health of cigarette smoking. Okay. Excessive cigarette smoking is a sin. The wages of sin are death. Simple rule. Simply stated. Simple biblical passage. Why am I pointing this out? Because studies have been done that show that smokers die at much earlier ages. Why is this important? It's important because they don't live long enough, right, to take full advantage of the healthcare system in Britain. As a result, they were net producers because they pay into the system that they never recoup the costs from. If you sit up there and ban the smokers, they'll live longer, and the cost of treating the old age becomes the issue, because the elderly need more healthcare services than the young. So in a sense, you could ban smoking. Your population you think would be healthier, but in reality, the cost of your healthcare are going to increase dramatically. Just pointing it out. Here's another freaking wonderful story from Philadelphia. Philadelphia's mayor says his fellow Democrats just voted for more people to die from drug overdoses. Experts say he's right. From Mr. Charlie Davis. Philadelphia lawmakers voted this month to essentially ban supervised injection sites. The vote came despite evidence that these sites significantly reduced overdose deaths. With the arrival of fentanyl, fatal overdoses are on the rise in Philadelphia. Over the last decade, about 10,000 people in Philadelphia have injected drugs, overdosed, and died. Each year, hundreds of people pass out on the city's streets and do not wake up. With the arrival of fentanyl, it's trending worse. 10 years ago, fewer than 500 Philadelphians suffered a fatal overdose. In 2021, the overdose death toll was almost 1,300. At least 8 of 10 fatalities attributable to drugs laced with the powerful opioid. Public health is not a field for moralizing. People should not generally inject into their bodies a substance they bought with cash from a stranger on the street. But people will because they are physically hooked on those substances. And many will not resort to best practices, like using a clean needle, and contract diseases that require lifelong treatment. We were just discussing this, folks. Kensington, a neighborhood in northeast Philadelphia, is ground zero for this behavior. It's home to open air dealing in heroin and trank, an animal sedative that can result in limbs being amputated. But people all over Philadelphia, addicted and unhoused, can be found lying motionless on sidewalks or in a stranger's front stoop. Yeah, and your solution is to, well, we'll have injection sites where people can come and we'll watch them kill themselves with drugs. It's the only compassionate way. We are going to show true compassion. And when that becomes a problem because the cost, which is what the issue was, because you're trying to steal, you keep electing officials who are basically stealing the treasury of your city blind. When inflation hits their pocketbooks, they need to steal more. But they can't steal more if these clinics are using the money that they intend to steal. And I know a lot of people think I'm being hyperbolic. I'm not. I'm being totally serious. You voted for this. You voted for people who care nothing for the actual problems, nothing, who have done nothing, right, but pontificate on how much they care, why they themselves got rich. They themselves got off crack cocaine and went on powdered cocaine because, well, it's a social statement when you're doing snow in the nose versus the crack pipe, right? And what are they doing? Does the city of Philadelphia ever get any better? No, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. What are you doing to fight it? Well, we're going to put them together into a clean area where we can watch them, shoot up. And we have drug rehabilitation programs. And how well do they work? What's the effect of the drug rehabilitation program? How many people are actually cured of drugs? What percentage? 2, 10, 20, 50, 70, 80? 80% of the people that go through your program, do they come? Are they cured? Just asking. Just asking, folks. Long Island town to woke New York City. We'll take the statues honoring Washington, Jefferson, and Columbus because New York City doesn't have any other problems. No, their problems was they had a statue of George Washington. A Long Island town has said it will gladly welcome the latest potential victims of New York City's cancel culture. Statues of historical figures such as George Washington and Christopher Columbus. Brookhaven officials said they already have even spots picked out for the statues and will cover the cost of dismantling and shipping them. I don't want to comment on whether that was a right or wrong because it's a decision of the city. But I said, if you're going to do that, then hey, we'll take the statues. Referring to the once hollowed historical figures now considered controversial by alleged woke haters. by alleged woke haters. They are woke haters. They're not alleged woke haters. They're proud woke. They're proud that they're haters. They're proud that they're woke. So basically, this town is saying, you got a statue of George Washington? Put it here. We'll bring him on over. You got a statue of Thomas Jefferson? You got artwork you don't want anymore? Oh, bring it over here. I'm sure that mural of George Floyd that replaces it will be perfect. Meanwhile, down in Virginia, Norfolk locals clash with men in Nazi uniforms marching through their town. A group of men who dressed as Nazi soldiers at a 1940s festival in Sheringham, Norfolk, all right, had to be escorted from the event by police after they were attacked by angry locals. At least 10 of them appeared in SS uniforms with swastikas, regimental markings on their collars, and the Death's Head Totenkopf, all right, divisional insignia, which is a skull and crossbones. Trouble broke out at a popular annual event in Sheringham High Street on Saturday as unimpressed crowds clashed with the group. Eyewitnesses say the group were outside the Lobster Pub when they were confronted by furious onlookers, with many reportedly shouting at them and telling them that they weren't welcome. Marshals were forced to step in and ask them to leave to prevent any violence escalating further after one of the men was reportedly attacked. Police then escorted the group away from the town center following the ugly scenes. Mike Keller, who lost family members in the Holocaust and whose father escaped Nazi Germany in the Kindertransport, was among those appalled by the sight of the uniforms. He said it was a lovely family atmosphere, very friendly, when suddenly, from nowhere, there were 10 to 15 men dressed in authentic SS uniforms, literally marching in unison. It was deeply offensive. These men were not milling about and blending in among the people. They were marching and making a demonstration. It was frightening. They should have picked a different decade. I have to admit that there's some of the other pictures of people walking and strolling and stuff through here. All right. If you're going to memorialize World War II, you have to accept it. And what do I mean by accept it? You got to accept what World War II was about. The people who think that World War II was some anomaly are completely wrong. People who think that World War II was some kind of anomaly in the world fail to understand what it was about, how it took place. In fact, most of these idiots are doing whatever they can to ensure that we get another one. We see the rise of this again. These people were upset because SS troopers were marching in their town. Can't blame them, not even in the slightest. The Totenkopf, as a military force, strictly in military terms, was a formidable foe. And they were defeated. They were also responsible for rounding up and exterminating the undesirables to the Nazi regime. Having a group of them march around in unison, it should scare the hell out of people. It should be frightening. And quite frankly, I think that the people's reaction to it was correct. You got to sit up there and go after this stuff and try to put an end to it. You don't want to normalize this kind of crap. You don't. Just like the Charlottesville thing. All right, I want people to understand things. The night before the Charlottesville thing, you basically had a tiki torch march, and it was reminiscent of the Nuremberg rallies. No matter whether you agree with what they were publicly saying or not, because they were not making the big racist rants of that Hitler makes. But even then, back in the day, right, prior to seizing power, the anti-Jew rhetoric was very minimal in comparison to what it became later on. Would they go after people arguing for common? That's a very good point, Mr. Barkley. Master Barkley has pointed out to all, and this is correct. The problem with it is that if you see a bunch of freaking people walking around with Russian uniforms or Soviet uniforms with a hammer and sickle, the same thing should apply to you. If you see people running around with a flag called Antifa, all right, you should be doing the same thing. Just pointing this out, folks. You are correct, though. They need more than just a single person. But I have no problem with the people chasing these guys out. That was my point. Suspect arrested in ambush killing of an L.A. County Sheriff's Deputy Ryan Klinkbrumer. Okay? A suspect in an ambush murder of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Deputy Ryan Klinkenbrumer, sounds like gonna clink, all right, was arrested early Monday morning, a day and a half after the deputy was fatally shot in the head. At a Monday morning news conference, LA County Sheriff Robert Luna said investigators are extremely confident they have the right person in custody. Even with that confidence, Luna argued or urged that anyone with information contact authorities to help the investigation. She identified the suspect as 29-year-old Palmdale resident Kevin Salazar. Salazar was being held at the Palmdale Sheriff's Station. Investigators believe that no other suspects were involved. 36 hours after the murder of our deputy, men and women of our department have arrested him early this morning. Deputies surrounded the resident, a house, and called out everyone inside early Monday morning. Family members exited the house, Luna said, but the suspect barricaded himself inside for several hours. After trying to de-escalate the situation and negotiate, special enforcement deputies deployed chemical agents. The suspect then surrendered. Investigators recovered numerous firearms and the vehicles of interest at the home. Salazar's mother and sister maintain that he has a mental health issue. Anybody that ambushes and murders somebody else probably does. They say he has been placed in a 72-hour psychiatric hold twice in the past, and they even called the sheriff's department on him themselves. Yeah, my condolences to the family, all right, said Jessica, Salazar's sisters. It was never a purpose thing. Just understand that it is my brother's mental health condition at the moment. It wasn't a coward thing. It wasn't anger. It wasn't retaliation. It was insanity, and your brother is a threat to everyone. Part of the problem that I have with people, all right, when I discuss these issues, like with Mad Dodge and several of these other leftists, even jackasses like Styx Hexenhammer, okay, is their inability to understand the primary purpose of the prisons. And I'm not talking about the primary purpose of prisons in the United States or in the West. Okay? I'm talking about the primary purpose of prisons around the world. Hey, Jacob. Welcome. Okay? The primary purpose of any prison around the world, at any time in the world, at any point in history in the world, the primary purpose of that prison was to remove threats to society as determined by that society. And I can hear it now. No, man, that's absolutely ridiculous. When the Nazis were rounding up Jews and then they were throwing them into the things, the German people, they didn't know what the Nazis were really. The German people voted the Nazis into power, folks. It was the society that they chose. It was their society that they were representing. And that society during that time frame was rounding up people that thought differently than they did and was executing them because they deemed it a threat. Is it horrific? Yeah, it is. But that's the primary purpose of all prisons, right? Is to remove threats to society from the society. That's its primary purpose. It's not to rehabilitate. The whole idea of rehabilitation, okay, is a relatively new concept, folks. Rehabilitation wasn't a concept in prisons, all right, until the 20th century, really. It wasn't until the 20th century that rehabilitation became an issue. There was another factor in all this, and I want to point this out. If you were convicted and went to prison in New York in the 1890s or the 1880s even, let's say you served 10 years from 1880 to 1890 in New York State Penitentiary somewhere, and then you got out. When you made your way to a different part of the country, let's say Lawrence, Kansas, for example, just picking a random city, nobody knew who you were, only that you came from New York. At that point, people didn't look at you as an ex-con unless you told them you were in a prison. As a consequence, you were treated as a stranger, not as a family member. You weren't welcomed with open arms. You were treated as a stranger. And you had an interesting dynamic that many people in prisons today don't. And that is, you could start over without people realizing that you had a negative past because everyone felt that there was skeletons in everyone's closet to some degree, and you had a chance to establish yourself as a good person again before somebody else eventually found out that you had served a prison term prior to that. And when people found out that you had served a prison term, if you had been a good member of society up to that point, people, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, gave them then the benefit of the doubt because they had proven that they wanted to be worthy members of the community. It's much more difficult today for people to get out of prison because of all this. We're going to check your background for whatever job you're going to be taking. You prevent violent criminals from reproducing. All right, let's go back to the beginning of the week, folks. How many people saw this story? Wreck of a missing F-35 jet found in South Carolina. The Marine Corps said late Monday that it had located the wreckage of an F-35B jet fighter that disappeared after its pilot ejected in South Carolina on Sunday. Military and civilian authorities all right, or excuse me, agencies, had been searching for the jet around two lakes near Charleston, but located the debris field in Williamsburg County, some 2 hours northeast of the city. 2 hours northeast of the city, huh? What, 5 miles? All right. Marines have also announced a 2-day pause in flying across the service this week to assess its safety practices. The F-35 incident is the third involving Marine aircraft in recent weeks, including a fatal crash of a V-22 Osprey in Australia. Okay, V-22s are very, very complicated. The F-35 is a very complicated airframe as well. The pilot ejected safely after what Marines called a mishap near Charleston, South Carolina, a term commonly used during ongoing investigations into aircraft incidents. Okay, now I'm gonna say something here because a lot of things were made about the missing F-35. How did we have a missing F-35? Okay, all this other bullshit. Okay, the reality is most likely when the F-35 crashed, they knew exactly where it was. Right? I would bet dollars to donuts they knew exactly where it crashed. And the reason I say that is because this was one of two jets that were flying in tandem. When the pilot ejected, okay, the other pilots, the other airframe has a responsibility of making sure that they report where the pilot landed. In this case, he landed and was immediately noticed, so they would have followed the airframe, all right, further on to where it eventually crashed, all right, which wasn't very far away, to be honest. 2 hours, all right, is not a distance marker. Oh, it's 2 hours north of Charleston. Really? Okay, that doesn't tell you shit. Okay, just pointing it out. Like I said, it could be 5 miles away. They knew where that debris field was. They knew where it was immediately. Well, but they reported it was missing, and they asked people for help in identifying where it went down. No, man, I heard that. And they did. And it was all a smokescreen. When you have an airframe such as this go down, okay, what they do is they want to get in there first, and they want to sanitize the area. They want to sanitize that debris field of anything, okay, that could be problematic if the public saw it. Hey, TM. So anybody who believes that, oh no, they lost it and they were really looking for it and they didn't know where it was and they didn't know where it crashed, like the people around Williamsburg wouldn't have known that there was a crash of a plane right by. Well, you just too busy to see that black smoke as it crawled into the sky. Yeah, well, nothing's over there. Wouldn't have investigated it at all. Well, it was in a field. It was in a field, no man. Don't you understand? Yeah, I grew up on a farm, folks. When there's smoke coming from some area, everybody goes to investigate it. Why? Because you're worried that it's going to spread to your house. Okay? You see smoke often fairly close to where you are, you go there. You go there to find out what it is. You go there to find out how dangerous it is to you. The idea that somehow, right, they didn't know where this was, this is absolutely stupid. They knew where it was. They cordoned off the area. They sanitized it so that the public, all right, when they heard where it is and they start coming around, doesn't see anything that they don't want to see. That's what this was. Nothing more, nothing less. From the Washington Examiner. Buy DEI. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. I really wish this was true. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, has insinuated itself into many aspects of American lives, from corporate hiring to college admissions. Over much of the past few years, diversity officers have been some of the hottest hires in business, university, and government bureaucracies. But recently, they've begun to feel left out in the cold. According to the Wall Street Journal's Companies including Netflix, Disney, Warner Brothers, Discovery have said recently that high-profile diversity, equity, and inclusion executives will be leaving their jobs. They're being fired. Thousands of diversity-focused workers have been laid off since last year, and some companies are scaling back racial justice commitments. Really? Because why? Because all it is an expense with negative revenue implications? Notice that word, negative revenue implications. They were getting negative returns from DEI. Think about that. The cost of your burger from McDonald's is more expensive because of DEI. Oh, you hate McDonald's. You hate the executives. They hired a DEI guy. Oh, their prices are too high. Most people are now claiming, and they are. And they are. It's not an exaggeration. Prices are too high. DEI is not the only reason that the prices are too high. That's true. But it's a good part of it. Because they're absolutely negative to production. They have a negative effect on productivity and output. You put in a DEI office in anywhere, and the first thing that you'll notice is that productivity from the workforce goes down. Goes down. Not up, down. Knowing that, why the hell would a business ever sit up there and hire these jackasses? Think about it. From Alabama. How many people saw this story? Alabama high school band director stunned and arrested after telling students to keep playing music, police said. Attendees and students at a high school football game in Alabama last week were left stunned and confused after police officers they tasered this guy, all right, and detained a high school band director who told his students not to stop playing their instruments. The arrest took place when Birmingham police officers were attempting to clear a football stadium at Jackson Olin High School on Thursday following the team's 27-0 loss to Minor High School, according to the Birmingham police officer Truman Fitzgerald, a department spokesman. Fitzgerald told the Associated Press that officers instructed both bands to stop playing so that the people would not linger at the facilities. He said that Jackson Olin band stopped performing, right? But Minor's band director, Johnny Mims, refused to silence his students. Instead, Mims told his students to keep playing. Then a scuffle ensued. So the band instructor, told by the police it's time to end the concert and go home, said, "Oh no, I'll decide when this is. Keep playing, boys and girls. I don't have to listen to the police officer. He'd be violating my rights." During the officer's interaction with Minor's band director, the decision was made to place him into custody. A statement from the Birmingham Police Department read, Birmingham Police Department officers attempted to take the band director into custody for disorderly conduct when a physical altercation ensued between the band director and the Birmingham City Schools System security personnel and the police officers. Fitzgerald said the band director refused to place his hands behind his back and then pushed the officer with his hands, so another officer shocked the band member with a stun gun. According to the Fox 6 Someone who witnessed the arrest said the lights at the stadium were turned off as officers made their way to Mims. She said that the officers sprayed mace, but not directly at any of the students. All right, paramedics treated the band director at the scene and then took him off to the hospital for further evaluation. He was subsequently charged with disorderly conduct, harassment, resisting arrest, before being released after posting bail. The arrest sparked some controversy on social media, with some users remarking that it was unnecessarily heavy-handed. The Jefferson County School Superintendent Walter Gonsolin declined to comment on the incident. All right, here's my comment. Heavy-handed or not, you disobeyed the police. They're going to use overwhelming force. Understand what the purpose of the police are. All police around the world or throughout history. The police, okay, are not there to serve the public and to protect the public. Okay? They are there to ensure public order. That is their number one priority, is to establish order. Always has been and always will be. And the reason is very simple. All the other things that you think police need to do or should be on their priority list can't take place if there isn't an establishment of order. Do you get it? When you sit up there and tell a police officer, go F yourself, what you're telling the police officer is their primary job is to establish order, and you're not going to listen to it. Well, no man, they could be violating my rights. That's not, the police officer might be violating your rights. Take it up with the judge. That's the process. If someone's violating your rights, you don't take it into your own hands and say, you know what, I'm gonna sit there and ensure my rights is protected, all right, unless it's a danger to your life. You're not allowed to take up arms because someone is just trying to silence you. You're able to sit up there and take up arms, all right, if someone is trying to silence you with force and thereby threatening your person, yes. But the adjudication of that will take place, must take place, in a court of law. So a guy who violates your rights, okay, if your rights are violated, go to jail. Put your hands behind your back, okay, put your hand behind your back, get arrested, get taken off you go. The moment you start to use force against force, they are going to bring overwhelming force, because their first goal is to establish order. And it's going to be overwhelming force, folks. This nonsense about everyone going, well, it's got to be reasonable and there's too much force. Look, unreasonable use of force, all right, is it real? Yeah. Is it rare? Yes. Because unreasonable use of force is when compliance is taking place and they still use force. Just putting it out there. Establish order by causing disorder. It can escalate. I'm not going to deny it. Now, this is a sarcastic from Rex Hupke. All right, I don't know if this is a staged name, which it very well could be, because this is all tongue-in-cheek. Note to UA workers and WGA writers on strike from a rich guy. Enough is enough already. The United Auto Workers are now on strike, and the writers and actors have been striking against Hollywood studios for months. These work stoppages are clearly frustrating for the extremely wealthy, and I'm happy to say One anonymous executive had the courage to share his thoughts with the strikers. Dear poor, striking poor, I'm a wealthy executive involved in both the auto and film industries, and I am writing today to politely ask you to halt your labor strikes before you do any more harm to me or my family, including my 3 purebred Tibetan Mastiffs, Hampton, Belvedere, and Haroof. This is on the in the USA Today, by the way, folks. All right, your unwillingness to accept these generous more than zero wages you are being offered is rude. Okay, stop this bullshit. Okay, at this point in time, if you fired every UAW worker and you fired every single WGA worker and all the actors and never let them back in again, I would say good. If you fire every teacher, and I got a story about the teachers union in just a minute, okay, I would say good. You're a union buster, Nomad. You're a union buster. It has nothing to do with that. First of all, the WGA was offered $14,000 a week for pay. 14 grand a week, and they refused to sit up there and come back. They said, not unless we get to tell you how many people you've got to hire on this project. Whether you needed 2 or whether or not you needed 10, we're going to demand that we get to decide how many people are in this writer's room. And it'll be a minimum of 20. Hired at $14,000 a week. And that is the problem. The WGA got everything that they wanted except for being able to decide the numbers of people required for the writer's room. And they walked out. Now, is that true of the auto workers? No. But I'm going to say something to the auto workers. They can go F themselves. And I'll tell you why. You sons of bitches, all right, have no freaking appreciation but for the fact that you have jobs. It wasn't that long ago, all right, when your companies were bailed the F out on the taxpayer's dime while other people lost their jobs permanently. You guys got subsidized by the American public. And now, what's your big bitch? Well, a lot of those subsidies went to paying these executives and everything else. And even though I kept my job and my high rates, well, screw you. I'm going to go on strike and I'm going to bring this economy, which is already teetering, I'm going to bring you to your knees. All right. Bye. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. If your union bosses are running around telling you it's a good time to strike, we really can put the screws to them, I can tell you right now, all you're doing is killing the auto industry in the United States. You guys haven't learned your lesson yet? You guys have not learned your lesson. McFly! You remember back in the 80s? What happened to your jobs? McFly! Remember how all the plants closed around Flint, Michigan? Remember what the union reps were telling you all then, too? Oh, no, you'll keep your job. Well, plant after plant after plant closed. McFly, have you woken up yet? Hope you speak hable español. Hable español, because that's where your job's going. Going to be shipped right across that border to Mexico. Hable español. See ya. Am I going to mention police unions or federal bureaucratic unions? Okay. I'm not going to mention police unions. Is everything in a police union good? No. But why am I not mentioning police unions? For the same reason I'm not mentioning unions in the miners. Okay. Unions are absolutely critical when trying to fix problems within your work environment. Inherently dangerous jobs such as mining, such as policing, such as firefighting, okay? They have a place when they're trying to say, hey, we need XYZ to keep our people safe. Don't get me wrong. There are times when they strike, just like all the other unions do, less work for more freaking money. Okay? And that becomes a problem. I'm never going to be a fan of the blue flu or the red flu or any of the rest of that bullshit. If you're striking for money, I don't want to hear it. If you're striking for equipment, like vests, if you're striking for those kinds of things, you can understand it. If you're striking for safety equipment, like miners, but if all you're doing is striking for less work for more money, sorry. You don't have a leg to stand on. Unions are necessary when you're trying to fix the environment of the worker. If you're an air traffic controller and you're like, I need less work for more money because my job's too damn stressful and I refuse to take off days even though I could because I'm making too much money. You got to just pay me more money. Bye bye. Nevada Supreme Court denies teachers union request to stay an injunction. The Supreme Court of Nevada on Friday denied the Clark County Education Association's request for a stay of the injunction a judge previously granted against it. The ruling means the union cannot keep going on limited strikes, causing some schools to close while contract negotiations remain at a standstill with the Clark County School District. Good. Start firing these teachers. Because they quickly said, well, we're going to keep doing it anyway. We're going to keep calling sick out. Bye. Fire all these teachers. Every single one of them. Every single freaking one of them has been screaming about less work for more freaking money. Meanwhile, what do you get here? You get these kind of whining and bullshit. Former teacher of 30 years quits job over out of control students and low pay. We've had enough. Teachers nationwide are quitting their jobs at an alarming rate. Florida's Lee School District is dealing with a major shortage with several teachers quitting after feeling financially undervalued and facing a lack of discipline among students. If you went on strike to sit up there and create a disciplined environment in your schools, I'd be all for you. But no. No, you're not there to work and fix the school environment. You're not going on strike to say, wait a minute, this kind of nonsense from these students has to stop. No. You want, I want more money. I want more money. Why these criminals run their schools? I want more money. You went on strike to say, no, wait a minute here. We need to be able to get the unruly element out of these schools. And until you give us the power to get the unruly elements out of the schools, we're not coming back. No, all for you. Students wouldn't applaud, all right? But I guarantee you their parents would. The adults who are actually the ones who are buying you, right? And what I mean by that is paying your wages, right? Because obviously, the wage system is slavery, according to 90% of you stupid leftist loons. But you're not striking for that. No. The behavioral problems in these schools are a direct result of less work for more money attitude from teachers. McFly! it that doesn't want discipline? Who is it that's against any kind of societal discipline anywhere? Is it is it the average? Is it the average American, or is it the ones running the NEA? You have created. You teachers have created a situation where the schools can't teach, where the schools are failing the students because you cannot control the work environment. Well, who should be in control of the work environment? Teachers. Why aren't you in control of it? Well, we're not allowed. We're not allowed. Why aren't you allowed? Why aren't you striking to be allowed? Why are you not striking to be in control of the environment? Because it's not a priority for you. You're liars. Okay? Teacher comes back and tells me about how unruly the school is. The first thing I do is union. Yeah. Why haven't you struck for that? Every time a teacher whines to you about how bad the school districts are and how bad the schools, the school students are and the school environment of the school, look them dead in the face and say, "Are you a union member?" And when they say yes, because they all are, look them dead in the face and say, "Well, how come you haven't struck to take back that power so you can fix the school environment in which you work?" How come? And I'll tell you why. Because they have no intention of disciplining that school environment. These guys are leftists. They like that. This is what they freaking vote for. I've had discussions time after time where people talk about teachers are underpaid. The teachers are underpaid and they're not respected. And we gotta pay more so that we get the good educators. Really? We're paying more than we ever have for teachers. Teacher pay has not gone up with the average pay. It's ballooned way above it. What is the average salary of teacher salary? Right here is a quick, just type it in Google. Salaries range from $37,000 a year to $77,000 a year in Tucson. That's Tucson. It's 39,000 to 60,000 in Nogales. In the 1970s in Alabama, the average salary was $6,818. That's 1969 and 1969 and 1970. In 2016 and 2017, okay, close to 40 years later, it's $48,000 in Alabama. And that was 2016, 2017. for 9 months worth of work. That's their pay. Because they only work 9 months out of the year. Let's be perfectly frank here. Summer vacations still exist here in the United States. You look at this table, and in Alaska, it went from $10,000 to $68,000 a year. Average pay. Average pay. Average salary. I'm pointing this out because the people who say that teachers aren't getting paid, they're being paid like they've never been ever. They've been being paid wages that they never saw before. The average pay from the District of Columbia went from $10,285 to over $76,000. That's the average. Okay? In Iowa, the average pay now is $55,000. Average. The average salary. Not the starters. Not the high earners. This is what the average is. You've seen between a 5 to 10-fold increase in salaries, and yet during this same time frame that you're seeing this massive increase in salaries, you're seeing a decrease in quality of outcome. The same time you jack up the prices for each teacher, students got dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber year after year. Boy, howdy, things really helped out there, didn't it? Things really improved, didn't they? Do you begin to see a problem? And during all that time, the supposed quality of teachers has gone up, right? We put in all these new regulations. Now teachers have to have the special degrees to prove that they're good educators, or you can't sit up there and maintain your status. In fact, you've got to go through special schooling to be a teacher now. In fact, to teach 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, you got to go to college to learn how to teach 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds. Parents raising kids, couldn't learn that. Math that a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, all right, by somebody who's 20, who's only had a high school education, even though they need to be able to do that at 5 and 6 years old. No. You need a college degree first. You got to get certifications. We have to certify that you're going to be a teacher. You're going to be a certified teacher. And yet, at the same time, we've gone through this entire process, mandating all these extra things for teachers so that we get higher and higher quality teachers. the outcome from these teachers has been less and less and less and less year after year. Do you think the problem when they go on strike is the school? Or do you think, and their pay, or do you think it's them? Because I think it's them. I think it's the teachers. And I think the pay discrepancy backs up what I'm saying. I don't teach at a top high school, but those rankings fail our students. From Rebecca Potter, an opinion piece. The U.S. News and World Report has just published its national rankings of public high schools. Schools are ranked well, use that information to tout how good they are. Bragging rights, proof that they are doing a good job, evidence that they're a good school. But it's not that simple. A lot of criticism exists about this report, and others like it for many reasons, because they're showing academic achievement. All right. The report uses advanced placement or international baccalaureate programs, standardized test scores, and graduation rates to rank schools. How dare they? Many schools don't participate in AP or IB, right? Those programs are great for what they are, but schools do not need to participate in either one of them to be good. Well, then what about your outcomes? What about their student outcomes? Right? How if you're saying that they don't have to be good, well, what about your standardized test scores? Are your standardized test scores good? The ranking system fails to consider so much of what makes a great school. For example, how qualified or experienced are the teachers? Immaterial. You can have the best qualified and most experienced teachers in the world, and if you're putting out shit product, it doesn't make you a good school. What other college and career readiness efforts exist in the school? Doesn't matter. How's that going to affect the thing? What about multilingual learners? So, in other words, product coming out of the schools doesn't matter. The fact that your kids don't know how to read, write, the fact that your kids have no critical thinking skills, the fact that they can't sit up there and have any knowledge, any historical knowledge of any kind of legitimate accuracy, but all of them know that climate change is going to kill the world. All of them know that. Hello, Lou. Welcome. Yeah, how dare they rank us and tell us that our students can't compete when they go to college and fail college? That's not a reflection of how well they learned. No, we'll just get more stories like this. Bronx daycare owner says she had no idea fentanyl was in a closet after a 1-year-old dies of suspected exposure. A 1 kilogram package of fentanyl was found in a hallway closet of a Bronx daycare center. Davino Eno, along with 2 kilo press devices, a criminal complaint said. the owner of the New York daycare center caring for a 1-year-old boy who died after an apparent opioid exposure, says she had no idea drugs were in the Bronx facility. This sounds like a production facility, by the way. Gray Menendez, or Mendez, I'm sorry, and Acevedo Brito, 41, were charged with murder and deprived indifference, manslaughter, assault, endangering the welfare of a child, and criminal possession of a controlled substance. The charges come after 4 children became sick and one later died from an apparent fentanyl overdose or exposure Friday at the Divino Nino daycare. Attorney for Menendez, Andres Manuel Aranda, said Monday, "My client had no knowledge that the drugs were there. She was the one that called the police. She called 911 and 311. The officials found a 1 kilogram package containing a white powdery substance that was later identified as fentanyl inside a hallway closet at the daycare. Authorities also recovered 2 kilogram press devices all right, inside that hallway closet and another inside the bedroom where Brito resided. Didn't know they were there. Don't know how they got there. Totally reasonable. She had no idea. The drug manufacturing machines were in my bedroom. Had no idea. Ah. Brito, the cousin of Menendez's husband, had been renting a bedroom in the daycare for 2 to 3 months, said Arata. The client feels terrible for what happened. She feels awful for the children. All right, noting Menendez never noticed the other children having symptoms of drug poisoning. Let's do a sports story. I don't do very many sports stories. Let's do a sports story, folks. Sean McVay explains his decision to kick a meaningless field goal that allowed the Rams to cover the spread. While some conspiracy theorists claim that the NFL games are rigged, Sunday's match up between the San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams led many to speculate that the Rams head coach Sean McVay knew the spread. Los Angeles trailed by 10 points with just 4 seconds left in the game, and rather than taking a knee, McVay questionably called on kicker Brett Mayer to attempt a 38-yard field goal, which he converted as time expired. The kick was meaningless to the outcome as the Rams still lost the game 30-23, but it had significant ramifications for sportsbooks and gamblers because it helped Los Angeles cover its 7.5 point spread. Countless fans took to social media to express their frustration and accused McVay of knowing the impact of nailing a field goal in the situation would have. However, when speaking to reporters on Monday, McVay elaborated on his in-game thought process and clarified that he was always planning on kicking a field goal, but he had hoped to do so earlier. We were going to try a field goal once we got into field goal position and then be able to kick an onside to try and give us a real opportunity to win the game, McVay said via Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk. By the time it got down to it, I didn't anticipate that in cut that we hit Puka, all right, running that long and said, all right, go ahead and kick the field goal, he continued. I felt like it was an opportunity to be able not to leave Matthew Stafford susceptible to an unnecessary heave to the end zone and get the opportunity for our field goal operation. Okay. The This is nonsensical, folks. It's nonsensical. For McVeigh to make this kind of comment tells me that he had money bet on this game. That's what it tells me. All right. Now, as far as kicking a field goal and so forth in that situation, okay, if he'd have said something like, "Hey, I might as well give my kicker in-game practice," that's what I was thinking. I'd have bought that, believe it or not. But to come back and say, "Oh, we're going to kick a field goal and then we're going to try and do a Hail Mary," no, no, you're always trying to do the Hail Mary first. You're always trying to do the Hail Mary first because getting the 7 points is more important to you. And if you're down at the 18-yard line, which is where you would need to be to kick a 38-year-old field goal, around the 20-yard line, about, right? If you're around the 20-yard line, you're going to get the ball. Throwing that in the end zone is a hell of a lot easier than trying to do it from your own 50. Whereas what an onside kick would have been like. This is why people were worried about the NFL getting involved with these gambling programs because they will start to shade games. Everyone has been terrified of this. Now you're seeing an example. Marilyn Manson gets community service for blowing his nose on a concert videographer. Degenerate Marilyn Manson, and yes, I'm using that term intentionally, right, from Laconia, New Hampshire, the where the story was written from. Right? Marilyn Manson was sentenced to 20 hours of community service and a fine on Monday after pleading no contest to blowing his nose on a videographer at a 2019 concert in New Hampshire. The shock rocker 54 wanted to appear via video for his hearing on the misdemeanor charge, but the judge required him to be in the courtroom in Laconia, about 30 miles north of Concord, the state capital. Manson, whose legal name is Brian Warner, was charged with 2 misdemeanor counts of simple assault stemming from an encounter with a videographer at the Bank of New Hampshire Pavilion in Guilford on August 19, 2019. Manson pleaded no contest to just the nose blowing charge in a fully negotiated plea agreement with prosecutors. The prosecutors agreed to dismiss the other charge, which alleged that he had spit on the videographer. The no contest plea means Manson is not contesting the charge and does not admit guilt. Manson was fined a little over $1,400 for his part in the deal, with $200 suspended. He needs to remain arrest-free and notify local police of any New Hampshire performances for the next 2 years. New Hampshire, a hub of concert goers. All right. The judge agreed to allow Manson to serve his community service in California. I don't know if that allowed or required him to do it. All right. He mentioned to reporters that he might choose to work with people in recovery. Manson has to give proof of his community service by February 4th. In May, a California judge threw out key sections of Manson's lawsuit against his former fiancée, Westworld actor Evan Rachel Wood, claiming she fabricated public allegations that he sexually assaulted and physically abused her during the relationship and encouraged other women to do the same. He is appealing the ruling. I've never seen the. I don't know of any Marilyn Manson songs. I've always called him a degenerate. It's not because I use that term for a lot of rockers. I called Kiss degenerate at the time, and I stand by that. They were degenerates. I call Alice Cooper, some of whose songs I actually do like, a degenerate. Now, Alice Cooper is not as bad as like D. Snyder and Twisted Sister, because they are truly degenerates. Right? Now, some people seem to dress nice and were degenerates. David Bowie comes to mind. Right? Rod Stewart. Just put it out there. Put it out. St. Louis man's crime spree included an armed taco holdup. At least it isn't a Florida man. A Missouri man is locked up following the alleged crime spree that included him pointing a gun at multiple victims while stealing a taco from a Mexican restaurant in St. Louis, records show. Antonio Murray, 19, was charged this week with robbing Lily's Pandaria, at gunpoint earlier this month. Witnesses told cops that Murray pointed a gun at a bakery employee before swiping a taco. After being collared, Murray reportedly admitted that he had walked up to the taco stand with the gun out and asked for a taco and left without paying. You held the place up for a taco. The female employee told the cops that she had been preparing a taco for another customer when Murray approached her and grabbed the food item, declaring it belonged to him while pointing a gun at multiple people. When arrested, Murray, charged with felony robbery, was carrying a BB gun in his waistband and it did resemble a real firearm. The taco holdup is just one entry on Murray's pending criminal court dock. The teen faces a pair of misdemeanor property damage counts for allegedly smashing two separate store windows. Of more legal concern is a complaint charging that Murray with breaking into the St. Louis home on September 5th and striking two victims, stealing a TV, and tasing a third victim. He allegedly returned to the residence on September 17th and attacked the man before whipping a female with a belt. Murray then retrieved a broomstick and inserted it into the woman's anus. He raped her. All right. After victims identified Murray via police photo lineup, he was arrested for robbery, assault, and sodomy. The defendant was interviewed and admitted to all the crimes. Then why was he walking around? Why was he walking around? The judge has ordered Murray to be held up without bail, ruling that the teen is a danger to the crime victim, the community, and to another person. Great, but shouldn't he have been arrested a while ago? Final story of the day, folks. Final story. Car wash workers find groundhog in front bumper of a customer's car. Workers at an Indiana car wash made a shocking discovery while they were examining the front bumper of a customer's car, a stuck groundhog. The woman took her car to Mike's Car Wash in Fort Wayne to be cleaned after a bird got stuck in the front grill, and employees were looking at the front bumper when they spotted the groundhog. It's like she has a whole freaking farm animal. She was running Noah's Ark from her car. The car wash workers took the vehicle next door to Jiffy Lube, where employees called the Fort Wayne Animal Care and Control for assistance. The Jiffy Lube workers set out about disassembling the front of the car to reach the animal. It was definitely an odd day at work. Last thing I expected was to be pulling apart a front bumper to remove a groundhog, said Jiffy Lube worker Dalton Brentke. All right, as he told WPTA-TV, he said the animal was not eager to leave the vehicle. He was cute, but he was definitely mad that we were trying to take him from his warm home. We ended up having to take off the front skid plate to give him room to leave the engine bay. After we got him out, he ran to the back of the car and hopped into the rear suspension. Had to take off the left rear tire to get him out. Here was the groundhog, nicknamed Mike by rescuers. Mike was pretty determined, was taken away by the Fort Wayne animal control people, all right, to be checked for injuries. Um, gotta give a credit. That is one ornery Groundhog. Car's mine. Gonna stay in the car. Okay, you took the bumper off. I'm gonna climb back into the car. Oh, you're gonna take the wheels off now. Oh my goodness. Mike the groundhog. Well, at least it wasn't Pawtucket Phil. Huh? All right, folks, that's all I got for the day. Hope that you enjoyed the show. Thanks for all of you coming out. Talk to y'all later. Bye bye, everybody.